The morning of August 17, 1942, the waters southwest of Guadalcanal shimmered under tropical heat as Lieutenant Commander Hideo Yamada's I-17 submarine surfaced to recharge batteries. Standard procedure after a night spent submerged, hunting American shipping lanes that fed the newly established beachhead on that contested island. Yamada's crew had performed this ritual hundreds of times across the vast Pacific. Surface at dawn, when American patrol aircraft were supposedly least active, run the diesel engines to restore battery power, dive before noon when enemy air patrols intensified. Simple mathematics of submarine warfare that had guided Imperial Japanese Navy doctrine since the 1930s. What Lieutenant Commander Yamada did not know, could not have known, was that 8 miles above his position, an American PBY Catalina flying boat cruised through scattered clouds on routine patrol. More importantly, inside that lumbering aircraft, radar operator Seaman James Mitchell watched a distinctive blip suddenly appear on his ASV Mark II scope, a surfaced submarine, detected at 12 miles range through morning haze and cloud cover that rendered visual identification impossible. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. The physics should have been impossible according to Japanese naval intelligence assessments. American airborne radar, Japanese technical officers had confidently reported to fleet commanders, possessed detection ranges of perhaps 3 to 4 miles against submarine-sized targets, maybe 6 miles under ideal conditions against larger surface vessels, certainly not 12 miles through atmospheric interference against a low-profile submarine conning tower barely protruding above the surface. Yet 12 miles was precisely the distance at which Mitchell's radar painted I-17 that morning, giving his Catalina crew ample time to prepare for attack. 12 miles of warning that transformed submarine surface operations from routine procedure into lethal exposure. 12 miles that represented a technological gap Japanese engineers would not fully comprehend until they examined captured American radar equipment months later in a laboratory in Yokosuka. The story of that examination, and the profound technological awakening it provoked, reveals how American radar development in the Pacific War created an invisible electromagnetic noose around Japanese submarine operations. It demonstrates how superior detection capabilities granted American forces the ability to hunt submarines that believed themselves hidden by distance, darkness, and weather. Most fundamentally, it illustrates the moment when Japanese technical experts confronted physical evidence that their understanding of practical radar capabilities was catastrophically inadequate. The confidence with which Yamada surfaced that morning reflected deeply embedded assumptions about technological limitations. Japanese submarine doctrine in 1942 presumed that enemy aircraft required visual contact for detection and attack. Submarines operating beyond visual range from known patrol routes enjoyed relative safety during daylight surface operations. Night operations provided even greater security given the difficulty of aerial visual search in darkness. These assumptions were not mere wishful thinking. They represented careful analysis of pre-war radar development that Japanese technical intelligence had monitored closely. Japanese engineers understood radar principles thoroughly. Dr. Hidetsugu Yagi had invented the directional antenna bearing his name in the 1920s. Japanese researchers at Nippon Electric Company had developed cavity magnetron prototypes producing 500 watts at 10 centimeter wavelengths by 1939, matching early British achievements in microwave power generation. What Japanese analysis concluded, based on their own development efforts and assessments of Allied capabilities, was that practical airborne radar faced insurmountable limitations. Weight constraints restricted aircraft to lower power transmitters. Antenna size limitations reduced gain and directivity. The curvature of Earth limited detection ranges against low-profile targets. Atmospheric absorption degraded signal strength at higher frequencies. Japanese calculations suggested that effective submarine detection from aircraft would remain limited to visual range for years to come. American engineers working on ASV Mark II radar had different constraints and different conclusions. The British development program that produced the cavity magnetron in 1940 solved the power generation problem Japanese theorists considered intractable. British researchers John Randall and Harry Boot at Birmingham University had created a resonant cavity design capable of generating kilowatts of microwave power in a compact, air-cooled package that could be manufactured in quantity. The Tizard mission of September 1940 brought this technology to America, along with complete technical documentation. American industry, particularly the Philco Corporation, began mass production of ASV sets in 1941. By 1942, hundreds of PBY Catalina flying boats operating across the Pacific carried operational ASV Mark II radar, capable of detecting submarines at ranges that Japanese intelligence assessments declared impossible. The system used meter-wavelength transmission, specifically 1.7 meters, generated by a 7-kilowatt transmitter. The relatively long wavelength allowed large antenna arrays constructed from simple dipole elements arranged on the aircraft's wings. Separate transmit and receive antennas eliminated the need for complex switching circuits. 2 Yagi directional receiving antennas mounted under the wings provided, bearing information through signal strength comparison on a split display scope. Physics and engineering combined to produce detection ranges against submarine targets of 12 to 15 miles under favorable conditions. Against larger surface vessels, detection extended to 20 miles or more. The system could not provide precise range information for final attack approach because of a minimum range limitation of approximately 1 mile. But it delivered exactly what submarine hunters needed most: early warning of submarine presence at distances sufficient for attack preparation before the target could detect the approaching aircraft and dive. When Seaman Mitchell called out his radar contact that August morning, Lieutenant Harvey Wilson brought his Catalina into a shallow descent, using clouds for concealment while closing the range. The crew prepared depth charges and armed the waist guns. Standard attack procedure refined through months of operations. At 3 miles, visual contact confirmed what radar had revealed. I-17 still on the surface, crew members visible on the conning tower, completely unaware of approaching danger. The attack achieved complete surprise. Depth charges bracketed the diving submarine, causing severe damage that forced Yamada to abort his patrol and return to Rabaul for emergency repairs. His after-action report noted the disturbing fact that enemy aircraft had somehow located his submarine without visual contact under conditions that should have provided concealment. Similar reports from other submarine commanders accumulated through late 1942 and early 1943, creating a pattern Japanese naval intelligence could not explain through conventional analysis. Submarines were being attacked at night in total darkness. Submarines running on the surface in heavy weather were being detected and depth-charged. Submarines operating in areas presumed beyond enemy patrol range were encountering American aircraft with uncanny frequency. The statistics told an increasingly grim story. Japanese submarine losses began climbing throughout 1943, while effectiveness against American shipping declined proportionally. The I-class submarines represented the finest engineering Japan could produce. These vessels displaced over 2,000 tons surfaced, making them among the largest submarines operating in any theatre of the war. They possessed phenomenal endurance, capable of cruising 20,000 miles without refueling, more than double the range of German U-boats. Some carried folding reconnaissance aircraft in waterproof hangars, unique capabilities no other navy had successfully deployed. Yet these sophisticated vessels were being hunted and killed at accelerating rates by aircraft they could not detect until attacked. The technological advantage American radar provided was rendering Japanese submarine capabilities increasingly irrelevant, regardless of how advanced the submarines themselves might be. Superior detection trumped superior endurance, larger size, and greater weapons capacity. The submarine that could not detect its hunter had already lost the tactical engagement regardless of other performance parameters. Japanese naval leadership recognized they faced a detection capability problem by mid-1943. What they did not understand was the specific technology creating this advantage. Was it improved visual optics allowing detection at greater ranges? Advanced direction-finding equipment tracking submarine radio transmissions? Some exotic detection method Japanese researchers had not anticipated? The answer would come from examination of captured American equipment, but first, that equipment had to fall into Japanese hands intact. The opportunity arrived in October 1943, when a damaged PBY Catalina from Patrol Squadron VP-11, one of the famed Black Cat squadrons operating from Guadalcanal, made an emergency landing in Japanese-controlled waters near Bougainville. The crew managed to escape in their life raft and were recovered by friendly forces, but the aircraft sank in shallow water, where Japanese salvage teams could access it. Recovery operations began immediately. Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita, commander of 2nd Fleet and responsible for Japanese submarine operations in the Solomon Islands area, personally ordered priority salvage of any radar equipment from the downed aircraft. Intelligence reports indicated these Black Cat squadrons possessed extraordinary nighttime detection capabilities. If the secret resided in their radar systems, examination of captured equipment might reveal exactly what capabilities American technology had achieved and how Japanese submarines might defend against it. The salvage team retrieved the ASV radar system largely intact despite water damage. The antenna arrays, the transmitter and receiver units, the display scope, power supplies, all were carefully packed and shipped to the Naval Technical Research Institute at Yokosuka outside Tokyo. There, a team led by Commander Yoshio Nakagawa would conduct detailed examination of what Japanese engineers believed would be a fairly conventional aircraft, search radar showing incremental improvements over previously analyzed Allied equipment. What they discovered, when they powered up the recovered radar set in laboratory conditions, transformed their understanding of the technological battle being waged across the Pacific. The system detected test targets representing submarine profiles at ranges exceeding 12 miles consistently, not occasionally under ideal conditions, not marginally under perfect circumstances, consistently, reliably, through weather and atmospheric conditions Japanese radar theory suggested should severely limit detection range. Commander Nakagawa's initial report, classified top secret and distributed only to senior naval technical staff and fleet commanders, contained a passage that would be quoted extensively in post-war analyses of Japanese radar development failures. The American airborne radar demonstrates detection capabilities we calculated to be impossible given known power output limitations and antenna constraints. Either our understanding of radar physics contains fundamental errors, or American engineers have achieved breakthroughs in microwave propagation and signal processing that exceed our theoretical predictions by margins we cannot explain. The implications extended far beyond submarine detection. If American engineers had solved problems Japanese researchers considered intractable, what other capabilities might exist that Japanese intelligence had not detected? The examination revealed several features that troubled Japanese technical experts. The cavity magnetron power source generated stable, high-power microwave energy in a compact package small enough for aircraft installation. Japanese magnetron research had produced similar frequencies but at much lower power levels, insufficient for practical military radar applications. The antenna system used elegantly simple dipole arrays that provided adequate gain without requiring complex parabolic reflectors or rotating mechanisms. Japanese radar designs relied on mechanically rotated antennas or electronic scanning methods that added weight and complexity. The American approach sacrificed some theoretical performance for practical reliability and ease of manufacture. Japanese engineers recognized this as philosophically different design thinking. Optimize for production and operational simplicity rather than theoretical maximum performance. The display system used straightforward comparison techniques, allowing operators with minimal training to achieve reliable detection and bearing estimation. Japanese radar operators required extensive technical training to interpret their more complex display formats. Again, the American design philosophy prioritized operational effectiveness over technical sophistication. Build systems that average operators could use successfully rather than systems requiring expert interpretation. These observations revealed something more profound than simple technological gaps in specific components. They exposed fundamental differences in how American and Japanese engineers approached military technology development. American designers optimized for mass production, operational simplicity, and rapid deployment. Japanese designers pursued technical perfection and maximum theoretical performance, even when this complicated manufacturing or required more extensive operator training. The examination also revealed what Japanese submarines lacked entirely. The I-class boats carried no radar warning receivers despite the availability of German METOX equipment through Axis technical exchanges. Japanese submarine doctrine emphasized radio silence and electronic emissions discipline to avoid detection. Installing radar warning receivers seemed contradictory to this philosophy, since the receivers themselves might be detected through their local oscillator emissions. This reasoning now appeared catastrophically flawed. American aircraft were detecting Japanese submarines electromagnetically, whether those submarines carried radar or not. The radar was on the aircraft, painting targets that had no warning. They were being illuminated until depth charges began falling. A submarine without radar warning receiver was electromagnetic deaf, unable to detect the very signals that had located it for attack. Commander Nakagawa's technical team calculated that effective radar warning receivers, tuned to meter wavelength frequencies used by ASV Mark II, could provide Japanese submarines with sufficient warning to dive before aircraft closed. To attack range. The detection range differential favored the submarine. A radar warning receiver could detect radar transmissions at roughly twice the range at which the radar could detect the submarine. This meant a properly equipped submarine could detect ASV radar at 20 to 25 miles, giving ample time to submerge before the aircraft closed to within its 12-mile detection radius. But implementing this solution required several developments Japanese industry could not rapidly deliver. First, production of sensitive meter wavelength receivers in quantities sufficient to equip the submarine fleet. Second, antenna systems that could be installed on submarines without compromising hull integrity or creating additional drag. Third, display systems that allowed submarine crews to distinguish radar signals from natural atmospheric noise and determine bearing to the transmitting aircraft. Each component required development time, testing, refinement, and production scaling that Japanese industry in 1943 could not accomplish quickly given competing priorities and resource constraints. German METOX receivers operated at different frequencies, optimized for detection of British radars. Adapting the design for American radar frequencies required engineering work complicated by limited direct communication between German and Japanese technical teams, given the vast distances and Allied interdiction of submarine courier missions. More fundamentally, by the time Japanese engineers understood the specific threat and began developing countermeasures, American technology was already evolving beyond the ASV Mark II system. Development of centimetric radar operating at 10 centimeter wavelengths provided even better detection ranges with smaller antennas. The ASV Mark III system, entering service in 1944, would render meter wavelength radar warning receivers partially obsolete, even as Japanese industry struggled to produce them. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. The technological race illustrated a pattern that would characterize American-Japanese competition across multiple domains throughout the Pacific War. American industry possessed the capacity to develop, produce, and deploy advanced technology at scales Japanese industry could not match. Even when Japanese engineers understood Allied technology and could theoretically replicate it, the industrial base required to translate understanding into operational capability at sufficient scale simply did not exist given wartime resource constraints. The examination of the captured ASV radar prompted broader assessment of Japanese radar development priorities and organizational structure. The Naval Technical Research Institute prepared a comprehensive evaluation in January 1944, analyzing why Japan had fallen behind in practical military radar applications, despite strong theoretical foundations and early research achievements. The report identified several contributing factors. Inter-service rivalry between Army and Navy had resulted in duplicated effort and refusal to share research results. The Army Technical Institute and Naval Technical Research Institute operated independent radar development programs that rarely coordinated. In some cases, Both services developed virtually identical systems simultaneously, wasting precious technical resources and manufacturing capacity on redundant programs. The August 2, 1941 directive establishing a crash program in radar development had come too late and with insufficient priority. By mid-1941, American and British radar programs had already achieved operational deployments and were refining second-generation systems. Japanese programs were still developing first-generation equipment and struggling with fundamental technical challenges American engineers had solved years earlier. Resource allocation favored established technologies over emerging ones. Japanese electronics industry in 1941 produced excellent radio, communications equipment, direction-finding systems, and other proven technologies. Radar represented unproven capability, requiring investment in new manufacturing techniques, specialized components, and trained technical personnel. Given competing demands for industrial capacity, radar development received lower priority than established production programs. Most significantly, the Naval Electrical Research Department responsible for radar development had grown to only 300 staff by August 1943. This compared to thousands of engineers and technicians working on Allied radar programs at establishments like MIT Radiation Laboratory in America or TRE Malvern in Britain. The scale differential meant Japanese researchers faced challenges that Allied programs solved through parallel development efforts by multiple large teams. The captured ASV radar prompted questions about other American technological capabilities Japanese intelligence might have underestimated. If airborne radar exceeded Japanese predictions so dramatically, what about surface ship radar, fire control systems, electronic countermeasures? The examination revealed a systematic failure in Japanese technical intelligence assessment that extended beyond radar to encompass broader understanding of American industrial and scientific capabilities. Japanese technical intelligence in 1942 had assessed American electronics industry as competent but not innovative, capable of copying British developments but unlikely to produce original breakthroughs. This assessment proved catastrophically wrong. American radar development demonstrated both innovative engineering and industrial production capacity that Japanese intelligence had failed to predict. The MIT Radiation Laboratory alone produced more radar innovations between 1940 and 1945 than Japanese military electronics research achieved during the entire war. The industrial capacity differential was even more striking. Philco Corporation produced 7,000 ASE radar sets, the American designation for ASV Mark II, between 1942 and 1945. Canadian factories produced an additional 10,000 sets. Australian production added 1,300 more. This meant Allied industry manufactured over 18,000 units of one radar type, while Japanese industry struggled to produce hundreds of sets across all radar types combined. The examination revealed that American submarines also carried sophisticated radar systems, providing surface search and fire control capabilities. Japanese submarines would not receive comparable radar until mid-1944, and then only in limited numbers, insufficient to equip the entire fleet. By that time, American submarines dominated Japanese shipping lanes so thoroughly that radar advantage became merely one factor among many contributing to Allied naval superiority. Commander Nakagawa's team tested the captured ASV radar extensively, documenting performance characteristics under various conditions. Detection range against submarine-sized targets varied from 8 to 15 miles depending on sea state, target aspect, and atmospheric conditions. The 12-mile range that seemed impossible to Japanese theorists represented typical performance, not exceptional results, under ideal conditions. This consistency indicated mature, reliable technology rather than experimental equipment operating at performance limits. The tests also revealed the system's limitations. Minimum detection range of approximately 1 mile meant aircraft could not use radar for final attack approach. Bearing accuracy of several degrees required visual confirmation before weapons release. The relatively long 1.7-meter wavelength provided less resolution than shorter wavelength systems. These limitations seemed trivial compared to the fundamental capability the system provided. Detecting submarines at operationally significant ranges regardless of visibility conditions. Japanese submarine commanders who reviewed the technical findings understood immediately why their losses had been climbing. They had been operating submarines, according to doctrines assuming visual detection limitations, while facing aircraft equipped with all-weather detection systems. The tactics developed for evading visual search, running on the surface at night or in poor weather, had become the very circumstances when radar-equipped aircraft held maximum advantage. Surface operations at night provided excellent radar targets against calm sea backgrounds. Poor weather that limited visual search had minimal effect on radar detection. The tactical adaptations submarine commanders had developed to counter visual search actually increased vulnerability to radar detection. Only submersion provided protection, but submarines could not locate targets or reach attack positions while submerged, given their limited underwater speed and endurance. The Americans had created an operational dilemma Japanese submarines could not resolve with available technology: surface-to-transit, search, and charge batteries, but accept vulnerability to radar detection and attack, remain submerged for protection, but sacrifice the operational mobility and search capability required for effective commerce raiding or fleet support missions. Either choice imposed penalties that degraded submarine effectiveness below levels required for strategic impact. Vice Admiral Kurita's analysis of the examination findings concluded that Japanese submarines faced technological disadvantages that tactical adaptations could not overcome. He recommended immediate priority for equipping submarines with radar warning receivers, even though development would require months and full fleet deployment would take years. He also recommended equipping submarines with their own search radar to allow submerged detection of surface targets through periscope-mounted antenna systems. Both recommendations received approval from Naval General Staff in February 1944. Implementation proved slower than hoped. The first radar warning receivers reached operational submarines in June 1944. The first search radars designed for submarine installation entered testing in August 1944. Neither system achieved widespread deployment before war's end, and those submarines that received the equipment often found it complicated to operate and maintain, given the limited technical training submarine crews received. The examination of captured ASV radar also influenced Japanese naval aviation development. If American patrol aircraft carried such effective surface search radar, Japanese reconnaissance aircraft required comparable capabilities. Naval aviation authorities requested priority development of airborne search radar suitable for maritime patrol operations. The request competed with demands for airborne intercept radar for night fighters, fire control radar for anti-aircraft systems, and surface search radar for naval vessels. Japanese electronics industry in 1944 could not satisfy all competing demands simultaneously, given limited production capacity and component availability. Choices about priority allocation favored systems with immediate tactical impact over those promising longer-term strategic advantages. Night fighter radar received high priority because American B-29 bombers were beginning strategic bombing campaign against Japanese home islands. Anti-aircraft fire control radar received priority because American carrier raids were devastating Japanese air defenses. Maritime patrol radar received lower priority because Japanese aircraft conducting such missions faced overwhelming American fighter opposition that made survival more urgent than improved detection capabilities. The reasoning was logical, given immediate tactical circumstances, but contributed to widening technological gaps in domains where American forces already held substantial advantages. The captured radar represented more than just hardware for examination. It embodied systematic advantages in scientific research, engineering development, industrial production, and operational deployment that characterized American approach to military technology throughout the war. Each component of the system, from cavity magnetron to display scope, reflected mature development programs that had solved problems Japanese researchers were still investigating. The antenna system demonstrated practical engineering optimizing reliability and ease of manufacture over maximum theoretical performance. The transmitter showed sophisticated power management, delivering consistent output across varying environmental conditions. The receiver exhibited selectivity and sensitivity, allowing weak return signals to be detected against background noise. The display provided operators with information in format enabling rapid decision-making under operational stress. These characteristics reflected years of iterative development, field testing, operational feedback, and design refinement. The ASV Mark II represented perhaps the fourth or fifth generation of airborne radar development, incorporating lessons learned from earlier systems and operational experience. Japanese airborne radar programs in 1944 were still developing first-generation systems incorporating features American engineers had perfected years earlier. Commander Nakagawa concluded his comprehensive technical report with observations that transcended specific radar capabilities. The captured American radar demonstrates not merely superior technology, but superior methodology for translating scientific knowledge into practical military capability. Their approach emphasizes rapid prototyping, extensive field testing, continuous improvement based on operational feedback, and industrial production optimized for quantity and reliability rather than perfection. We must adopt similar methodologies if we hope to close technological gaps in remaining war years. The recommendations went largely unheeded. Japanese military culture valued technical perfection and theoretical rigor over practical compromises that enabled rapid deployment. Engineers who suggested reducing performance specifications to simplify manufacturing faced criticism for lacking commitment to excellence. The cultural emphasis on achieving optimal solutions created systematic delays as research programs pursued marginal improvements, while American engineers deployed adequate solutions quickly and refined them through operational iterations. The examination revealed another crucial difference. American radar development involved extensive cooperation between military services, industrial manufacturers, and academic researchers. The MIT Radiation Laboratory brought together physicists, engineers, and military operators in collaborative environment, encouraging innovation and rapid problem-solving. Japanese programs maintained rigid hierarchies, separating military requirements from industrial capabilities and academic research. Inter-service rivalry prevented Army and Navy from sharing research results or coordinating development efforts. Industrial manufacturers received specifications and contracts, but had limited input into design decisions. Academic researchers worked on theoretical problems disconnected from practical military applications. The organizational structure inhibited the cross-disciplinary collaboration that characterized American radar development and produced such successful systems as ASV Mark II. By the time Japanese engineers understood these systematic differences, the war had progressed beyond points where organizational reforms could change strategic outcomes. American forces controlled the Pacific Initiative. Japanese industry faced critical shortages of raw materials, components, and skilled labor. Strategic bombing disrupted manufacturing and transportation networks. Even if Japanese radar programs could have replicated American technological achievements, industrial capacity to produce equipment in operationally significant quantities no longer existed. The story of the captured ASV radar and its examination represents a moment of technological enlightenment that came too late to change strategic realities. Japanese engineers understood what American technology had achieved. They understood how it had been achieved. They understood the industrial and organizational superiority that enabled such achievements. But understanding alone could not overcome the material and industrial disadvantages Japan faced by 1944. The 12-mile detection range that seemed impossible to Japanese theorists in 1942 represented routine capability for American radar by 1943. That this capability caught Japanese naval leadership by surprise, despite theoretical knowledge of radar principles and early research in magnetron technology, illustrates how technological competition in modern warfare depends on more than scientific understanding. It requires industrial capacity, organizational effectiveness, cultural adaptability, and institutional commitment to translating knowledge into operational capability at scale. The psychological impact of the examination extended beyond technical revelations. Japanese submarine commanders who received briefings on the captured radar's capabilities understood they had been fighting an invisible enemy. Every time they surfaced, electromagnetic waves they could not see, hear, or sense had potentially marked them for destruction. The confidence with which they had executed surface operations dissolved into awareness of vulnerability that tactical skill alone could not overcome. Lieutenant Commander Yamada, whose I-17 had been attacked that August morning in 1942, reviewed the technical findings with particular interest. The 12-mile detection range explained the impossible accuracy with which American aircraft had located his submarine through morning haze. The crew had been visible on radar scope for several minutes before visual contact occurred, giving the Catalina ample time to position for optimal attack approach. What had seemed like bad luck or exceptional enemy skill was actually systematic technological advantage applied across hundreds of patrol missions. The realization proved demoralizing. Submarine warfare required psychological confidence born from belief that skill and tactical acumen could overcome enemy capabilities. Discovering that enemy aircraft possessed detection systems against which no tactical response existed except remaining submerged undermined the fundamental confidence submarine commanders needed to execute their missions effectively. Some commanders became hesitant about surface operations, remaining submerged even when battery condition demanded surfacing for recharge. This caution reduced operational effectiveness more than radar detection itself might have. Submarines that surfaced briefly only when absolutely necessary could not maintain adequate battery charge for sustained patrols. They could not search effectively for targets while minimizing surface time. They could not close rapidly on detected convoys without extended surface running. Fear of radar detection created operational paralysis as damaging as actual detection events. Admiral Kurita recognized this psychological dimension in his recommendations. He emphasized that equipping submarines with radar warning receivers would restore commander confidence by providing detection capability, matching the electromagnetic threat. Even if radar warning receivers only detected a fraction of enemy radar transmissions, knowing they possessed some warning capability would encourage commanders to execute surface operations with the aggressiveness required for effective submarine warfare. The industrial response to Kurita's recommendations revealed another dimension of Japanese technological disadvantage. Western Electric in America could manufacture thousands of radar warning receivers monthly using established production lines and readily available components. Japanese electronics manufacturers estimated they could produce perhaps 50 units monthly if given priority resource allocation and if component supplies remained consistent. Both conditions were problematic by mid-1944. Strategic bombing had begun disrupting Japanese electronics component manufacturing. Allied submarines controlled shipping lanes, preventing raw materials from reaching Japanese factories. The industrial infrastructure that might have supported rapid radar warning receiver production simply did not exist given wartime damage and resource constraints. Even with technical knowledge and engineering capability, translating understanding into operational equipment at scales required for fleet deployment exceeded Japanese industrial capacity. The examination of captured radar equipment occurred in October 1943. The first Japanese radar warning receivers reached operational submarines in June 1944, 8 months later. By comparison, American industry deployed thousands of improved centimetric radars during that same period, equipment against which Japanese meter-wavelength warning receivers would be less effective. The time required for Japanese response exceeded the pace of American technological advancement, ensuring that Japanese countermeasures addressed yesterday's threats while new capabilities emerged. The captured ASV radar now resides in a museum in Japan, preserved as historical artifact, demonstrating the technological gaps that contributed to Japanese defeat. The copper magnetron that generated those 12-mile detection ranges sits in a display case alongside the antenna elements and receiver components. Museum descriptions note that this single piece of equipment represented American scientific achievement, industrial capability, and operational deployment effectiveness that Japanese forces could not match, despite possessing theoretical knowledge and skilled engineers. Post-war analyses by Japanese military historians identified the radar gap as one of several crucial technological disadvantages that determined Pacific War outcomes. Others included proximity fuses for anti-aircraft shells, advanced fire control computers for naval gunnery, sophisticated cryptographic systems, and industrial production capacity for ships and aircraft. Each represented areas where Japanese technology fell behind Allied achievements by margins that tactical skill could not overcome. The radar disadvantage proved particularly significant because it was invisible to combatants experiencing its effects. A pilot could see enemy aircraft with better performance. A sailor could observe enemy ships with superior armament. A soldier could identify enemy tanks with thicker armor. But radar created advantages impossible to detect through direct observation, leaving Japanese forces uncertain why enemy detection and targeting proved so effective. This invisibility created intelligence challenges. Japanese technical intelligence tried to assess Allied radar capabilities through multiple sources. Examination of captured equipment provided definitive answers but occurred infrequently given the difficulty of recovering intact systems from combat areas. Radio intelligence could detect radar transmissions, but determining capabilities from signal characteristics alone proved difficult. Interrogation of prisoners provided limited information since most captured personnel lacked detailed technical knowledge. The result was that Japanese understanding of Allied radar capabilities consistently lagged behind actual deployments. Intelligence assessments concluded American radar could detect submarines at 6 to 8 miles when actual systems achieved 12 to 15 miles. Assessments predicted centimetric radar would not reach operational deployment until 1945, when it actually entered service in 1943. Each underestimation led to tactical decisions based on incorrect assumptions about enemy capabilities. Commander Nakagawa's examination provided accurate assessment of one specific system at one point in time, but radar technology continued evolving while Japanese intelligence struggled to track developments. The ASV Mark III that replaced Mark II operated at 10 cm wavelength with improved detection ranges and better minimum range performance. Later systems incorporated features like height-finding capabilities and improved signal processing that further enhanced detection performance. Japanese submarine forces never achieved parity with American detection capabilities. Even when radar warning receivers became available, they provided incomplete protection against evolving American radar systems. Even when submarines received their own search radar, the systems proved less capable than American equivalents and suffered reliability problems under harsh maritime conditions. The gap that existed in 1942 persisted through 1945, despite Japanese efforts to close it through technical development and equipment deployment. The statistical evidence demonstrates the operational impact. Japanese submarines sank approximately 1 million tons of merchant shipping during the entire Pacific War. American submarines sank 5.2 million tons during the same period. German U-boats, despite facing more sophisticated Allied defenses in the Atlantic, sank 14.3 million tons. The Japanese submarine force, despite possessing sophisticated vessels with extraordinary range and unique capabilities like aircraft carriers, achieved only a fraction of the impact that American and German submarines delivered. Multiple factors contributed to this limited effectiveness. Doctrine emphasized fleet support rather than commerce raiding. Training focused on coordinated operations with surface forces rather than independent patrol. Targets prioritized military vessels rather than merchant shipping. But technological disadvantages, particularly radar detection vulnerability, imposed operational constraints that limited effectiveness regardless of doctrine, training, or target priorities. Submarines cannot sink ships they cannot locate. Submarines detected and forced to submerge before reaching attack positions cannot engage targets. Submarines spending excessive time submerged to avoid radar detection cannot search effectively or close on distant targets. The electromagnetic advantage American radar provided systematically reduced Japanese submarine operational effectiveness below levels required for strategic impact on Allied logistics or fleet operations. The examination of captured ASV radar represented a moment when Japanese technical experts confronted physical evidence of their technological disadvantage with perfect clarity. They could measure detection ranges, analyze system architecture, calculate performance parameters, and understand exactly what capabilities American aircraft possessed. This knowledge did not translate into ability to match those capabilities given industrial limitations and accelerating pace of American technological advancement. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.